everyone. Hi. I work here. I'm Sergeant Brian Biseglia, like it says right there. I manage the cybercrime unit, right? And like it says there. And in the cybercrime unit, we also do, well, I'm going to go over what we do, but digital forensics. And originally, I had this presentation on why digital forensics was important. And, but then I realized it was a presentation on the cybercrime unit, so I add a little bit about what we do. So, my background is, I think it's different than most police officers, probably definitely, I think. When I tell you, you let me know if you agree or not. So prior to being a police officer, I was an electrical engineer. I did hardware design, electronic design. I have 3 U.S. patents, which I don't know how many other folks, do anyways. My education is electronic engineering technologies, my undergrad. My master's is applied computer science. And I'm working on my PhD and going into my 7th year. I don't know if anybody has taken this on, but it's quite a challenge. I may or may not recommend it. I don't know. It's a lot, just for the record. And so all my coursework is done, so some people might call that ABD, right? All but dissertation. And my area of research is human vulnerabilities on for data loss in senior citizens. Okay, so that's my education. That's my background. That's what I've done before. I mean, I had a paper out. I won't go that far back, right? So that's, yeah. So a lot of times I give this presentation to at a university or college. So I always love to ask. Does anybody know? Yeah, who said that?
Mr. T.
Yeah. Who drives the van? Mr. T drives the van, right? And sometimes I ask, who does anybody know where this van is? What show? Do you know what van this is from? Yeah, I was talking to you with the coffee.
Me?
Yeah. No, see, and that's the answer I always get. No, and I feel like, oh my God, this is awful. Yeah, it's because Anyways, it's a great show if you can look it up. So I'm going to go over just a little bit what cybercrime unit responsibilities are. A couple of definitions. I'll go over 5 investigations, summary, and conclusions. Right? Okay. So. And there's quite a few words on this slide, so I apologize. I was going to make it 2, but anyways, here you go. So we do digital forensics, right? And then you might be asking, what's digital forensics? I'm going to answer that in the next slide, right? So don't worry about that. So we investigate crimes against children, right? Which can be, like I wrote up there, right? It could be various things. Trafficking, sextortion. We used to be referred to as child pornography, but we refer to it now as one of 2 things: child sexual abuse material or child sexual exploitation material. And people wanted to refer to it a little differently because pornography can be adult pornography, right? Which may or may not, depending on some of your beliefs, but is generally acceptable, right? But children clearly not. So, anyways, they wanted to emphasize that and gave it a new name. It's still written in the law as child pornography, like Massachusetts General Law 272-29, A, B, and C, right in there. I think it's defined in C. people watching on the camera don't, you guys look it up. I think it's that. Anyways, so crimes against children, and so we also have a partnership with federal organizations, right? Why? Because it's the internet, right? Okay, and Internet Crimes Against Children is a task force that takes in leads from. Has anybody heard of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children? I see a couple heads shaking yes. So they collect, electronic service providers have to, if they find contraband on their servers, right, they have to report it. And eventually it gets filtered down to some law enforcement. It could be a federal agency, it could be a local police department, it could be state agency, except in Hawaii. Did you guys know there's no state police in Hawaii? Did anybody know that? Yeah, at least somebody learned at least one thing when you guys are done. You'd be like, hey, I learned one thing.
Why?
I don't know if that's what you're supposed to learn, but anyways, that's it. Did you know that?
Why don't they have?
I don't know. Maybe it's a bunch of islands. I mean, they can't get across. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. Yeah, Hawaii 5-0, yeah. Somebody asked.
Hey, we had 18.
A-Team is fun. That's one of my favorites. You're going to keep getting me on that tangent, huh? Because I can be easily distracted, just for the record. And then some of the other things we do, technical assistance, video forensic, audio analysis. Sometimes people call that multimedia forensics. It's just a name that it's kind of like an abstraction, and that is, it's really, like video forensics and audio analysis. And, what's audio analysis? It might be like, you have a recording and there's noise, and you're like, I can't really hear the words. I'd really like to hear the words, right? So how do you get rid of the noise? Well, it's magic. And, it's not magic, but it's, what I mean. Anyways, so we do those things. And by technical assistance, I mean, there's occasions where, some language we might need to generate for maybe an affidavit, and it's something technical. Like that, technical things may or may not be hard to talk about, right? And talk about in a simple way, right? Like if a medical doctor talks to a medical doctor, they can talk the language, right? But if a medical doctor talks to the patient, they should probably be able to communicate more clearly and not in the same jargon that they would talk to the other medical doctor, right? Or whether it's one researcher to another, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes we help with that. Right. At the end, just if you have questions, just write them down. And if you're like, I need to know this right now, then just interrupt me, okay? But there may be a question like that, I don't know. Okay, so, yeah, so this is my first definition. I don't even know if this is a real definition or not, but it's certainly my definition. And it's, nerd is a technology and digital forensic expert. You might be asking, why did you even have to define that? Because I use it at the end, right? So I need to define it ahead of time if I use it, right? So, okay, and then digital forensics. So these folks here, I cited, their definition of digital forensics. It's pretty good. I'll just read it. Digital forensics can be defined as processing, collecting, examining, analyzing, reporting digital evidence without any damage. That's pretty important, without any damage. What they really mean is to the original electronic device, right? So, which also means you're maintaining the integrity of your evidence, right, of your devices. Anyways, that's what they mean by that. And let's see, what else do they say about digital forensics? Requires, it could be computers, mobile devices, SIM cards, tablets, and I would also add in there, network devices, which they didn't include. Did they include that? No. Like network devices could be, a router, right? For example, sometimes there's some important information. In fact, do I have? I didn't include. I have a good example of that, but I didn't include it. But sometimes there can be good information in there. By good, I mean, important to an investigation, right? Or other times, investigation. So that's the two definitions. I just wanted to say one thing. Who's the person who owns the Woosocks? Who is that? That's he's a dentist, right? Dr.
Didn't it just get sold?
They did get sold. Yeah, before they got sold, I guess I mean. Anyways, the point is I was going to make is I was explaining to him what the cybercrime unit did, and I said, we're the nerds. He said, oh, you guys sound like the technology experts. And I was like, huh. Yeah, I guess you could say we can use that too. That's fine. So, anyways, and I asked this question too. I'm like, who's this? When I make it, and everyone goes, we don't know who that is. And I'm like, yeah, they might know it's.
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, but what's the character, right?
That's Gary.
Yeah, but nobody knows that. Not nobody. Sometimes. Well, I didn't want to say that a lot, but you did. So yeah. And what I really like, I like to ask, does anybody know his call sign number or his badge number?
Make my day.
No, that's his tagline. Yeah. Anyways, his radio sign was 71 and his badge number was 2211. And I always thought, if somebody comes up with that, like, often I have these little wooden coins that I give out. They say "good job" with a smiley face on the back, and I forgot them because if you guys answered some of these ridiculous questions, but I forgot. I'm so sorry. And some people ask, well, can I turn them in for credit at the end of the semester? And I'm like, no. They mean nothing. It's just fun, right? Anyways, actually, I might have said yes, but. So these are the folks that we're going to go over. All of these, all the information you'll see have been in press releases, right? So this is nothing that hasn't been released to the press. But you may not know these folks, right? Probably not. Maybe not. I mean, some of them are local. I'll go over them. That's what I was going to do. All right. So this is Matthew Clem. This is the expression when you figure, oh man, I've done some things I probably am not really happy about, right? So Matthew, so what happened here? Matthew, we had a victim. They came to the police station. They had said, the victim had said somebody was bothering them online. So I like the most important point that I like to make about this investigation is that so we have limited time, right? Limited resources, human, limited technology resources, right? It can be a little overwhelming at times, right? So I remember this was not that long ago. How long ago was that? Maybe this is 2015. I don't remember, 2015 or so maybe, but I vividly remember the victim saying, hey, I blocked this person who we didn't know at the time. This person turns out to be Matthew Clem. But, the victim said, who was young, said, he's not bothering me anymore. So you could easily say, you know what? No more problem, right? I'm going to move on. But I remember that she said, but he did offer to, he wanted to meet the child, right? And and I remember specifically him saying that I'll help you disarm the alarm that your mom sets, right, to protect the child. Am I making myself clear? So at night, the mom sets the alarm, right? The child can't get out because the alarm is set, right? Because what happens when you open a window? Hopefully the alarm goes off, right? So that causes a problem if a child's supposed to sneak out. And then this other person said, well, I'll help you defeat that. And I thought to myself, that's a little over the top, right?
Right.
Like that's a lot. The point being, sometimes somebody will say something and make you go, you know what, this requires a little bit more effort, right? Anyways, so that was, did I write that down here?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, do you see it?
The
Third
one.
bullet.
All right. Oh yeah, that's what I just wanted to say. All right, good. So anyways, we, from digital forensics, we get a search warrant. What else is it right here? Yeah, he had, if you find this press release, this was a state case, which then became was adopted by the feds, right? So we ended up, this is very interesting because we charged, we had physical contact victims here, and we had also production. Did I write that down?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so production also, right? And so the contact offenses the Commonwealth took, and then the production the United States took, right? So we actually had to drive me and the special agents I work with, from the federal courthouse. They get sentenced, and then they gave him to us, to me and the girl that I work with, and we drove him down to the state courthouse, which is just down the street, not that far, and gave him, put him in the court for the Commonwealth, and then the judge sentenced Matthew concurrent 20 years, and then I remember she said, and now Bill, take him to some place. I was like, we need him back. We promised, the U.S. Marshals, we'd give him back. So we had to take him back, and we drove him back. This is me driving back, in case you didn't realize. Yeah. Yeah.
Mind if I put a little of this in perspective?
Please.
1 in 2 or 3 women experience sexual violence in their life, and 1 in 3 or 4 boys. Depending on the statistics you look at. The average pedophile, predator, has 118 victims. So when you take someone like this off the street, it has incredible impact.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. So to build on your point, and your point is, these folks who have a sexual interest in children have many victims, often many more than ones with, I don't know how to word this. Anyways, to your point, I think they were. This number was more than 1,000, I think, if I remember right. And I'm not saying that there was 1,000 victims. I'm saying that there was contact between, and what that contact was is hard to figure out, right? I mean, it's 1,000 plus people. This is difficult, right? But the point is, many. To build on your point, which is yes, and that has been my experience, by the way.
How old was he?
That's a good question. I don't know if somebody you can Google it. It'll come right
No,
up.
roughly, just.
Was he in his 30s, maybe? I
Yeah.
don't know, 30s, maybe. Yeah.
Just thinking how long he could have been on the loose.
Yeah. He also pretended to be in the military. I didn't write this. Did I not write this down?
No.
Yeah, he had done some things like that, and he, it's just not, probably don't invite him to your cookout, I guess, would be good advice. Anyways, so Matthew, that's Matthew Klein. Oh yeah, Pasquale. So what's that? No, yeah, so he was a sheriff in Texas. This was, all in the news. You could Google his name, and a lot of media attention on this probably because that was his job. But again, this is usually about digital forensics, right? So one of the important things here is we were able to recover many images here in Massachusetts, right, off of a victim's phone, right, and then, the good guys from here flew to Texas. I was one of the good guys, right? And and met up with the other, cops and federal agents down there. And so we executed some search warrants down there. And but it's a little tricky, trying to get a police officer to come talk with you, right? Especially if because he has a gun, right? I was like, oh, this is a problem. I'm like, how do we deal with that? He for sure has one. I'm positive. So anyways, we were able to avoid that kind of problem, because that can be a big problem, right? Especially where, anyways, so we resolved that problem. And I remember he walked into the room that me and another agent were in, and he's really tall. It's like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't get that upset. Right? Right? That is tall, strong, big. I was like, Anyways, he was fine. He asked me a funny, maybe not funny question. He goes, do you think this will affect my job? And I said,
Yeah, of course not.
Well, I said I'm not really the right person to answer that. I'm not your boss. I don't really know. I'm not, right? He doesn't work for me. I have no idea. I could guess, as could probably everybody in this room and maybe people at the other end of that camera. But, right? I thought it was a crazy question. Anyways, so an interesting thing about what's great about digital forensics is, so during a search warrant, I think there were maybe 3 locations, and I ended up at his apartment, right? But I had to be at the sheriff's, I don't know what they call it, station or sheriff office. I'm not sure what they call it, but and he no. So I end up going to his home where the search warrant is. And I remember so we do on-site forensic examinations, so we kind of get some information right away, which might help the person who's interviewing, right? So if you actually find some important stuff, well, that might be good to ask some important questions, right? That you already kind of know the answers to, because you found evidence already, right? Because authorized by your search warrant. So I remember the forensic examiner saying, I found some images of children, but I'm not really sure who they are. And I was like, I know who they are. Show me, right? Which he did do. And it was all fine. And so we found, images of our victim here in Massachusetts and Texas, right? So that's pretty strong evidence, and a whole bunch of other evidence, right? But the point is, digital forensic work up here, right? We have some stuff we can find, and then we find it at a location, very far away, pretty far away. Not as far away as California, but almost halfway. But digital forensics, right? So digital forensics is hugely important in these cases. They not only support claims, like so-and-so did this, right? That's a claim, right? And how do you support it? With evidence, right? And digital forensics provides that. Sometimes. A lot of times. I think one of the things I'd like to point out about this case is he said that the cops in Massachusetts, like he was trying to say that, I'm going to paraphrase a bunch here, but the cops in Massachusetts, are going to, are working with me, so you should be very afraid and do what I say, because the cops in Massachusetts are going to do what I ask them to do. That's not true, right? We actually are going to come get you, just for the record, which is exactly what we did. And then he got, 18 years. So he was wrong, right? That's not the way it works. If you, we're gonna come find you, right? Which is exactly what we did. So that's all I want to say about Pasquale Salas. So Scott Peeler. So he was a teacher in here, and the important thing I think about this is, Yeah, so you read that already, right? Attempted to engage in live sex shows with children ages 4 to 14 years old, right? So young. And so that means he would pay for, at least certainly attempted to pay for a show, right? I think in this case, he may not have actually even gotten the show that he either attempted to pay for or did pay for. I don't recall. But the point is that we were able to do some work. I didn't write this down. Anyways, well, we were able to do some work in cooperation with the Filipino government, and we actually recovered the children in the Philippines, which is way further than Texas, right? It is, trust me.
Agree.
Yeah, thanks. And and that was some of the great work of our federal partners, right? Fantastic job. And for that matter, the Filipino government, right? And so that's a pretty good success story for digital forensics, right? And our federal partners and the folks here. Yeah, and this is me. I don't know if you can tell. That's me. And this is my partner, Jen, who didn't want to have her face seen. I don't know why. But very, she does amazing work. And I've been very lucky to work with her over the years. Really great, fantastic law enforcement, special agent person. Wonderful. So, Sean. So Sean Boisford. So this is, I should preface this, this is some great work done. Can I have your list again of the people you have? Do you have anybody from Special Crimes Unit? Yeah, sexual assault they called it here, yeah. So some of the folks in that unit did a fantastic job here, so I just want to mention them. So this is somebody from a neighborhood in the city who, had multiple contact victims, right? As well as produced possession and dissemination. Harmful matter is child pornography. Maybe not. It could be pictures, adult pictures, right, sent to a child, right? That's harmful matter. Anyways, the point about this investigation is, did I write that in here? No. All right. Let me think of how to word this. So during this investigation, digital forensics, right? We were able to recover images, and the point I want to make is there was one image, maybe more than one image. I don't remember how many images. At least one image, maybe more, of a sexual assault of a very, very, very young child. I would say, let's just say very, very young. And inappropriately being contacted, you can extrapolate from there, right? The person who took the image also took a photograph of their own hand. So that may be good, right? Because we have really high definition cameras today, right? That we all carry around, right? Yeah, fingerprints, exactly. So we were able to recover the fingerprint. So this is the great work of our latent print unit here, right? Of our physical forensic unit, and subcategory of that, latent print unit, did a fantastic job identifying the person from the photo fingerprint, which we recovered, during digital forensics to hand it off to them, right? This is incredible work. This is a really great job. And moreover, they didn't do it once, right? If you want to make, if something's scientifically sound, it has to be repeatable, right? So it was repeated also, and the same results were found. This is right? Validity and reliability of your findings, right? So, excellent job combining, digital forensics and the world of physical forensics and the world of, regular, and, investing police work, right? That find, who found these victims. Just a great job by many people collaborating together, and with a great result, because this is state prison, right? This is by the Commonwealth, sentence him to, or her. I'm not sure. This is maybe his gender changed, I think, but 45 to 60 years. This is a long time, right? 45 to 60 years. That's a good sentence. Yeah. So digital forensics, and a whole bunch of other people. This is all of these. These are hardly ever done, by one group, right? It's always a collaboration, and it's I've been very fortunate to work with some wonderful people over the years. So. Yeah, all right, so this is, Paul Menard had multiple victims that he drugged and took sexually explicit images of, and the Massachusetts State Police did a great job with this case also, so did the North Brookfield Police, and so did the FBI. So it was a really good collaborative effort between multiple law enforcement agencies, right? And the Worcester DA's office did a fantastic job. This is Lena right here. I probably paused her now in the most flattering position, but she did a fantastic job. And I think the most important thing to point out about Paul Menard is that he was very patient, right? And he befriended the family, the parents, right, of the children, and got them to like him, right? Which then fostered trust, right? Which then allowed him access to children, right? So, this I think is a good example of very patient predator, right? Very patient. I can't think of another word. Can anybody think of another word to describe him?
I can't say it.
Okay, you can tell me later. So he was very, very patient. And the police officer in North Brookfield, I think that particular police officer works in Ware now. Did a fantastic job, of he originally had asked for some help, and then it all just flowed together, right? It was just everybody working together. So really, quite an excellent job by multiple agencies. Okay, so so just in summary, they all had a sexual interest in children. These crimes occurred over the internet, digital devices. There was some violation of public trust here, right? Sometimes we give certain people trust by default, right? Police officers, doctors, nurses, teachers, preschool. Who are the folks?
Daycare.
Thank you. Daycare. Yep. And we just give them our trust, right? And so when there's a violation, it should be held to a very high standard, right? And again, this was really digital forensics. The point digital forensics was heavily involved in these investigations and certainly it contributed to the amount of evidence to support what the prosecution was saying, right, was claiming. And most people get this, by the way. Who's that? Yeah.
Thelma.
It's Velma, yeah, Velma. That's one that people usually get. So I just like to point out digital forensics is needed in a lot of investigations. Certainly from my experience, digital forensics is certainly required in today's world to help protect children. And that's why I had to find nerd, right? That's why I use that. And you told you I'd use it. And we really don't have enough help. We need more technology experts, right? Which I call nerds, and which I think is pretty. A person is a nerd, and it might bring up a System 1 kind of stereotype, which is fine. But the problem is, nerd skills, right? Technology experts. I'm not saying we necessarily need all engineers, but I mean, that would help. But, stronger, more resources, technology experts. Nerds. That's the one reference. And, thank you. And hopefully I was informative. And any questions? Or comments?
No.
Okay.
Sexual predators, they necessarily molested as children? I mean, what makes them do that?
That's a really complicated question, and it's way out of my area of expertise. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to point back to that comment I made before. 1 out of 2 or 3 women experience sexual violence in their lives, and 1 out of 3 or 4 boys. So it's pretty prevalent, but the majority of that's done by a small number. And you're right, they may have themselves been, but it's a small number of people who, relatively speaking, when you look at it.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you cope with seeing all this?
That's an excellent question. Yeah.
Because I could just imagine it could mess you up. Just knowing as a parent that you have kids and then you're basically going after these people and seeing all these images, like it affects you as doing your job as well.
Yes, right? And how? It's a good, can it haunt your dreams? Yeah, of course, right? I think, when you can experience if you're lucky enough to experience some success, right? Like recovering children halfway around the world because of something you did in Worcester, Massachusetts, this is pretty satisfying. And I can tell you, we've identified many dozens of children from videos and images that we've seen. When we first get them, we're like, who's that? Right? We don't know. But we have found many. Not, halfway around the world, but also right here, right here or around here. So, I think maybe that the answer is it's difficult, and I don't have. There's a lot of research out there on it. Some, there probably should be more, but yeah, I don't have a great answer for that.
It has its pros and cons because it's like you witness all this, but at the same time, it's a victory because you take one less person off from doing more damage.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but how to cope? I don't have a great answer for that. Yeah. Yeah, please.
So, I got a question, right?
Yeah.
Is there like measures that are being taken by the police, to like, help mitigate the amount of victims that are out there?
I didn't catch the beginning. Bullies, did I hear?
Are there measures that the police is taking to help mitigate the amount of victims? Because it looks like, based on what I've seen here so far, it's after those people have had victims. Maybe one victim spoke up, and then an investigation was conducted, and then somebody was caught, and then somebody was convicted. So is there a way that we could, or the police, could mitigate the amount of victims that are out there?
Yeah, I'm tracking. I see before bang, right? Before the event, before. Yeah. I understand your question. So, there are, right? So, various, that's not I could add. Yeah, that's a good point. This made me think of something. But you have no idea what I'm thinking because I actually just thought it and didn't actually say it out, right? But, yeah, so there's, awareness and education for children, right? So I just recently helped with a presentation in a neighboring town that the Department of Justice puts out, right? And I forget what they call it, but it has to do with internet safety for young children. There's other resources that that we can bring awareness to, like the Federal Trade Commission. They have excellent resources on bullying, and if you Google it, you can find, Cyber Smile, I think, is another organization who has a lot of information. So you might ask, well, how proactive are we at getting that message out there, right? I participate in some of that, and I just don't know enough about what other groups do within the building to answer you further. I know that there's other types of awareness and education programs, right? Which is probably the best mitigating thing that law enforcement can do. But also the parents too, I think, need information also. Not only the potential victims, right?
Yep.
But also the persons who oversee them, whether a guardian or a parent. Yeah, go ahead.
So like what actually got me to ask that question was that, so I've been, as of lately, a friend of mine sends me videos and stuff like that on YouTube of the Ghost Team, for example.
The what team?
The Ghost Team. I don't know if you heard about them.
No.
Okay, there's this sort of gentleman, I think his name is Sean or something like that, I forget his name.
Okay.
But he does TV shows and stuff like that where they boss different people all over America who are into child molestation. And
Okay, all right.
pornography and
Okay.
etc. So, but in that same video, all I see is victims. Sometimes, they have this program that where sometimes they wait for so the police can set up, maybe have let's see, like a trap, set for the victim, maybe have a fake child and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, is that a possibility to do that? Yes. And have the word trap I would be careful with using, but
It's used, so-
yeah. But I get your
Thank you, that's what-
I get your point. I see your point. We have engaged in that. That's a very resource heavy thing. You have to be engaged all the time. Especially if you're talking with someone who you think has a preference for a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's another thing that can and does happen if you talk in the broader law enforcement in general. Are there other law enforcement engaged in that type of, there has to be, right? Yeah, the question, you know, if you ask how much effect does it have, I don't know the answer to that.
All right.
You know what I mean?
All right.
Maybe there's research out there on that, I don't know. Yeah.
Do you think from your work, the
Yeah.
majority of the digital forensic work goes into helping solve sex crimes, or are there other crimes that it's even, or do you find most of it goes towards sex crimes?
Yeah, okay, so digital forensics can be across anything, right?
Yeah.
It could be in the private sector, violations of policy, right? Which could, you know, there could be stuff left behind on a device for, you know, corporate policies being violated. Maybe, you know, I don't really know, you know, but maybe inappropriate use of a computer during work time or something. That's a policy, right? Maybe they shop on Amazon and they're not supposed to. I don't really know. But that might be a policy, right? And so, you know, maybe there's some kind of internal, you know, that.
Mhm.
So it could apply to something like that. Is my point. But and it could apply to many in
Fraud.
all kinds of, you know. So here's the thing, right? We focus on investigation here, child endangerment, because
Okay.
you have to focus on child endangerment, right? You know, and you know, are there other scams or frauds or who could use the attention of, you know, digital forensic examinations? Yeah, probably, but this goes back to my resource thing. Right? We need more technology experts, right? And it also involves you know, hardware and software and, you know, it's in education. You know, it's hard to do. Digital forensics is difficult, right? But the answer is it's not just child endangerment. It's across many different crimes and even policy violations. Yeah.
On a more technical note, how is, I mean, I think it's on the rise, especially in cell phones, but we've also got it on computers, the rise in encryption impacting you guys. Are you guys able to work around that relatively efficiently, or, you know, Apple especially maintains some really good privacy standards on their phone?
Yeah, you know, I mean, so, you know, I don't want to give away secrets, right? But in general, you know, encryption is a problem, right? But encryption, you know, has its weaknesses, right? Like one of, you know, like a very, a very simple, you know, encryption requires a process, right? Okay, and if you interrupt that process, you know, you may be able to recover an encryption key that was left behind, right? And the person who wrote the application or software didn't intend to leave this encryption key behind, but they expected it to, you know, to close down properly, and you know, and they would take care of all the stuff that they left behind, but they never got to that point. And I think, you know, something like this recently happened. I think it was, I don't want to mention a company name, but at a company, and they had some crash data, and this crash data went to a lab, and somehow they got, I think it was some kind of, maybe it was an email certificate or signature or something, and the point is there was something in this encryption or authentication process that was in the crash data, right? That wouldn't probably have been there if it wasn't crash data, right? And then somehow that information got to a foreign country. Yeah. You can Google it, and you'll find it. And but the point is, like, so there's probably like an insider problem there, right? Maybe, I don't know. But the point is, yeah, encryption has some weaknesses, right? But you know, and it's hard to make a secure device, right? It's like, it's really hard. And you know, if there's a vulnerability that can be exploited, then, you know, these forensic companies who we have to rely on, you know, for many things, then, they're going to try to exploit those vulnerabilities, and identify them.
So then are you mostly contracting out the,
I wouldn't say contracting out, no, but I would say, how can I put this? Like I didn't build this laptop, right? But I use it. You know what I mean? Same thing, right? Like there's forensic software that we buy,
Okay.
right? And then there's a whole bunch of nerds there, right? Right? Black belt nerds, right? Like, anyways, wicked smart, right? They're a really smart group of people, and they make. We rely on them to help us, right? And we should understand how it works, at least in generalities, certainly, and be able to explain it. But yeah, so does that answer your question? Yeah, all right. Anybody? No? All right, well then, thanks for your time. I hope that was, wow, it's a pretty good time. And thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Remelad. I'm a Worcester police officer. I've been on the job for 19 and a half years. I started in the operations division for about 8 years. I worked 7 or so years in the detective bureau, a couple of years in the vice unit, drug work, and now I'm assigned to the training division. So they asked me to come in and give a quick overview on constitutional and criminal law. Trust me when I tell you this is a very, very basic overview of these classes. Each one is its own class that usually when it's taught to recruits is probably about 40 hours. So we're going to try to knock out this in 2. Okay? So constitutional law. So imagine you're at home. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning and you're in bed and you hear something outside. So you go to your window and you look out the window and you see, hey, there's a car parked out in front of my house. You look a little closer, there's some people in there, right? I don't recognize that car, I don't recognize those people. What are these guys up to? So you give it a couple minutes, right? Because you don't want to be that, that nosy neighbor that calls the police right away. Give it a couple minutes, it's still staying there, right? Now you're starting to get a little bit nervous. So you decide, maybe I'll call the police, right? You call the police and you tell them, hey, there's a suspicious car outside of my house. I don't really know what they're doing, but I'm worried. Maybe there might be a case in the neighborhood, maybe breaking into a house or something like that. A couple minutes later, police show up, pull behind the car, turn on the blue lights, approach the car, pull everyone out of the car, search everyone. Maybe they find a gun on them. Maybe they find out, hey, these guys are casing the neighborhood. Hey, in fact, they were casing your house to break into your house. They're thrown in handcuffs, wagon comes, throw them into the wagon, off to the station they go. Good job, right? Police did a good job, didn't they? No, right? There's rules that we have to play by as police officers. And in that specific scenario, we violated those people's constitutional rights probably 5 times over, okay? So, as police officers, like I said, there's rules that we have to play by, and that's basically constitutional law, okay? And when we're talking about constitutional law, basically what we're talking about is case law. And what is case law? It's interpretations of the law by the courts, and it sets the guidelines that police are required to follow while they're performing their duties as police officers. So who creates the case law? We get our case law from the Massachusetts Appeals Courts, Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, or the SJC we call it, and of course, the Supreme Court of the United States. And if anyone has any questions, just feel free to raise your hand, all right? Just interrupt me as we go, okay? So the United States Constitution is the basic law of the land, provides fundamental principles for our government. It provides grants and limitations of power for the government, establishes individual rights for all citizens, right? And every law enacted in the United States has to comply with the United States Constitution. A state cannot enact a law that is in violation of the United States Constitution, okay? And we're going to get deeper into that in a little bit. So the Bill of Rights, they're the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, the prohibitions of government power, and it's relevant to what we do as police officers. And we're going to hit those too. So the First Amendment, does everyone know what the First Amendment is? I'm sure we do, right? Freedom of religion, press, speech, the right to peaceably assemble. It protects symbolic speech, flag burning, right? It also allowed citizens to videotape police actions. Videotaping police officers is allowed. People can even secretly record us while we're performing our jobs. It's their First Amendment right. What it doesn't protect is violent speech. Lots of debate on that recently, huh? And threats. Second Amendment, right to bear arms, right? I don't think we need to delve too deep into that one. The Fourth Amendment. As recruits, every recruit that walks through this door has to memorize this verbatim. Whether or not they remember it 20 years later is a whole other story. And the reason why that is because this is where a person's right to privacy is one of the most sacred things that they have, right? And as police officers, oftentimes we infringe on that right. We have to know when and when we can't do it, pursuant to the Fourth Amendment. So, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches shall not be violated. And no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause. So we need a warrant to violate someone's security in their person's, houses, paper, and effect, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause. Probable cause is the standard that we have to meet if we're going to violate those rights. Supported by oath of affirmation. So to get a search warrant or to get a warrant, we have to swear to it, oath of affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched or the people or things to be seized. We have to go into very, very, very fine detail and describe the place that we're looking for, the person that we're looking for, the property that we're looking for. We can't be vague. We have to be very, very detailed. The Fifth Amendment protects citizens from double jeopardy and self-incrimination. Double jeopardy means if you've been acquitted of a crime, you can't be recharged and tried for that crime again. And then self-incrimination, we're talking about Miranda, and that's at the end of the common law section. We'll get into that. Sixth Amendment, usually this Sixth Amendment attaches when a person's arraigned, as far as the police are concerned. It's the right to be informed of charges against. Most of the time, out on the street, the officer's going to tell a person what they're being charged with when they're arrested. At booking, they're going to be told again, and then at arraignment, they're going to be formally charged. Right to counsel, and a right to a speedy and public trial. Eighth Amendment, protections from excessive bail or fines. That doesn't really have anything to do with the police. We don't set bail. We're not the ones who determine the fines. We have bail clerks and judges set bail. Prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. That affects us somewhat because we have a cell room downstairs, right? They have to have running water. They have to, it can't be 20 degrees down there. So we have the United States Constitution, and then we have the Massachusetts Constitution, the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights. Massachusetts Declaration of Rights may never hold police officers to a lesser standard than the United States Constitution, but it may be more restrictive on how the police can investigate, and it definitely does in this state. Okay? The United States Constitution basically sets the floor, and the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights is the ceiling. So our Constitution, or any state's Constitution for that matter, can't take away any of the rights or liberties that the United States Constitution gives. They can grant people more freedoms, more rights, more liberties, but they can't take them away, the ones that are established through the United States Constitution. That make sense? In some cases, the Mass Declaration of Rights provides greater protections to citizens than the U.S. Constitution. I just said that. And it's actually kind of funny because when you read Article 12 and Article 14, they sound almost exactly like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and it's because it was almost plagiarized, right? Our Constitution was written before the Bill of Rights, and they used our Constitution when they were making amendments to the Constitution. Pretty interesting, I thought. So the police operate on two standards of proof: reasonable suspicion and probable cause. Has anyone ever heard of those? Reasonable suspicion and probable cause. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt? Not us. That happens over at the courthouse. The more intrusive the police action, the more proof police need of criminal activity. So, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So what is reasonable suspicion? Specific and articulable facts that lead an objective person to believe criminal activity has or will occur. Specific and articulable facts. We specifically have to point to what that person is doing, and we have to be able to articulate it. We have to be able to explain it. We have to be able to write it down, right? And that has to lead a reasonably objective person to believe that this person is involved in criminal activity. It's more than a hunch, and some have kind of described it as a concrete suspicion. So when police officers are trying to establish reasonable suspicion, these are the things, some of the things, not all the things, that they can consider. The area of the encounter, the time of day, right? It's a lot different. 2 in the morning, you see someone peeking in cars in a used car lot, right? Than at noon, right? Does that make sense? The reason for the encounter, the officer's training and experience. So sometimes police officers will go to courses where they can, like a course on drugs or firearms, where they're taught the characteristics of people that are selling drugs, using drugs, carrying firearms illegally. Familiarity or lack of familiarity with the defendant. Hey, I know Ron Remillard. He doesn't have a driver's license. Pull over, you know? Defendant's nervousness or evasive conduct towards the police. So that alone isn't reasonable suspicion. But if someone's nervous or they have evasive conduct and you couple that with other things, that person that's looking into that car window in the used car lot at 3 in the morning, they're nervous and then they take off running, it's a lot different, right? Than if someone just doesn't want to talk to us and just walks away. In a high crime area, an officer may never consider a defendant's race towards their development of reasonable suspicion or probable cause. So a quick scenario, officer sees a male walking down Millbury Street, it's kind of a high crime area now, with his shirt stretched and torn and he's bleeding from his nose. Would a reasonable person believe that this person was involved in some kind of violent encounter? No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not reasonable? Well, that's to be debated then, I guess. But,
So, can I?
sure.
So one could say that one possibility is that, that can infer from what you're saying here, that there was a fight, someone was involved in a fight.
Mhm.
Another could be that someone was involved in a motor vehicle accident or something, or fell off their motorcycle.
Sure.
So the reason to stop and question somebody is very different in those two scenarios.
It is, but reasonable suspicion is a very, very low standard, right? We're not talking probable cause, and we're certainly not talking proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We're talking, is it reasonable to believe that this person was involved in some kind of criminal activity? Not a specific crime, not he definitely didn't, and not he definitely did not. Is it reasonable, would an objectively reasonable person believe that this person was involved in some kind of criminal activity?
Or they,
And I agree with you.
Yes.
Maybe he wasn't.
or they
But
were the
maybe he was.
recipient of something.
I'm sorry?
Or they were on the receiving end of some criminal
We're
activity.
gonna get to that.
Something, violent something.
That's why I love these scenarios, because it gets people talking. Just for curiosity, how many say yes? How many say no? One went way up. She could touch that ceiling, she would. Probable cause. Probable cause. As recruits are mandated to memorize this verbatim. And the reason why is because this is a standard that we are held to when we place a person under arrest, when we take a person's freedom from them, for however short of a time that is. That's pretty significant, right? There's not a lot of people in the world whose jobs involve being able to take someone's freedom from them, right? Probable cause. At the moment of arrest, when they make the arrest, the facts within the knowledge of the arresting officer or the collective knowledge of the police, and of which the officer has reasonably trustworthy information, was sufficient to warrant a person of reasonable caution and prudence to believe the person being arrested has committed or is committing the crime for which the arrest is being made. Sounds pretty similar to reasonable suspicion, huh? They're real close. It's a really fine line between them. So what's the difference? Reasonable suspicion, is it reasonable to believe that this person's involved in criminal activity? And probable cause, is it more likely than not that a crime has been committed and that this person did it? An officer sees a male walking down Millbury Street whose shirt is torn and stretched. He's bleeding from his nose. Believing that this male was involved in a violent encounter, the officer stops the male. The male tells the officer that Ron Remillard and a group of friends assaulted him by punching him in the face and kicking him while he was on the ground. Is it more likely than not that a crime has been committed against this male? We would never found this out had we not stopped this guy. How many yeses? Any no's?
That's what he's saying. That doesn't mean, unless you
Yeah.
can establish trust.
So like I said, this is a really brief overview. But since you brought it up, I'll talk about it. So a victim of a crime or a witness to a crime, if they're named and identified and they provide the police first-hand information, they've passed the Aguilar-Spinelli test for veracity and basis of knowledge. The information that they give us, we can rely upon that. And that's nationwide. Hey, that's what the day in court is for too, right? An arrest or being charged with a crime isn't a conviction of a crime. The police encounter. Most police and citizen interaction is voluntary and non-criminal in nature and not a seizure under the Fourth Amendment. Police need no legal justification to approach, talk with, or ask questions of any citizen in any public place so long as the citizen is willing to listen and voluntarily answer. Police cannot compel cooperation or seize someone without legal justification. This used to happen all the time back in the day before there were patrol cars. Police officers used to be out there walking their footbeat. What would they do? They'd be out there talking to people, right? Building relationships. Learning, hey, I know you. You live at 20 Almont Ave. Hey, I know your father, I know your mother, I know your aunt, right? The police encounter, super underutilized. You get a lot of good information just talking to people. You're on patrol and is assigned to the Millbury Street area of the city. I have some kind of affinity with that. That used to be where I patrolled. Okay? As you're passing Crompton Park, you see Rodney Harrison. Everyone know Rodney Harrison? Come on. Safety for the Patriots. Sitting on a park bench. You're familiar with Harrison and you know that he's an East Side gang member and is rumored to be responsible for several gang-related shootings. You decide to park your cruiser and take a seat next to Harrison on the bench. You say, hey, what's up, Rodney? And engage him in normal conversation. Given this scenario, will the courts determine this interaction to be a police encounter? No? Why not?
He's bound.
Just because he's a suspect in shootings, you can't go over and just say, what's up, dude?
It depends how he might take it.
True, he could get up and walk away, and we can't compel him to stay.
Or he could feel that he's being harassed because he's well known.
He could, but he could get up and walk away, right?
Yeah.
We can't compel that person to stay, and we can't force him to have a conversation with us. But that doesn't mean that we can't go over and try to have a conversation with him, right? And I think we'd be negligent in our job if we didn't, right? Police stops, investigative stops, Terry stops, threshold inquiries. In Worcester, we just call them stops, okay? And there's a whole bunch of other names for them. What are they? They're warrantless seizures of citizens. They're short in duration, and they're conducted to determine if probable cause exists.
What's a Terry stop?
So it's based on a case, I think it's Terry versus Ohio. It's off of a case law, Terry versus somebody. Okay, it's where they gave us the rules that we have to follow while we're conducting a stop. Standard for the stop: reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. What's the purpose of the stop? It's to verify or dispel the officer's reasonable suspicion. Right? That guy that we stopped on Millbury Street where his shirt was torn and his nose was bleeding, we thought he might have been involved in some kind of criminal activity. We find out, we stop him, we find out, hey, this guy was actually a victim of a crime. Right? You're assigned to Operations Days Division and on uniform patrol on a marked Worcester police cruiser. On this cold winter morning at 0900 hours, you dispatch to 3 Wall Street Court on the reports of shots fired. The first responding officers broadcast that they have located shell casings and a pool of blood in the driveway. However, there is no one around. As you are making your way to the scene, you see a male that is wearing a black hoodie and black joggers running in the opposite direction down Suffolk Street, approximately 500 feet away from the scene. When the male sees your cruiser approaching, he turns and cuts through backyards towards Grafton Street. Then you make your way towards Grafton Street, where you see that male has discarded his hoodie and is now walking down Grafton Street, profusely sweating. Given this scenario, do you have reasonable suspicion to stop this male?
Yes.
Yeah? Any no's? Why not?
Well, it's not definitive. If it's a reasonable person standard, you're going by the reasonable person standard of the officer, not of the person.
I guess I don't understand. Can you explain that again?
So, under the reasonable person standard, just because he's sweating, or he could have diabetes, he would start sweating.
He could, but you're only considering that he's sweating. 500 feet away from place of a shooting, sees you, dips into a backyard, ditches his hoodie, and is now sweating profusely as he walks away, trying to hide in plain sight. Is it reasonable to believe? I'm not saying he did it. I'm not saying he didn't do it. But is it reasonable to believe that this guy was in some way, shape, or form involved in that shooting? Frisks. The patting down of a person's garments and body to determine through the sense of touch the presence of a concealed weapon or any object that could be used as a weapon. Frisks are not searches for evidence. Standard for the frisk: reasonable suspicion based on specific and articulable facts that the person is armed and dangerous. Frisks are not searches for evidence. Okay? In fact, we don't even call them searches. We call frisks frisks. And it's based on reasonable suspicion that the person is armed and dangerous. For a frisk to be determined lawful, the court will examine the frisk in 2 parts. Was the stop of the individual based on reasonable suspicion? So 1, you need to have a lawful stop. And 2, was there reasonable suspicion that the person being frisked was armed and dangerous? So I'm sure you guys have all heard of stop and frisk. Happened in the 80s, 90s in New York, Giuliani, New York City. Massachusetts, no dice. Actually, I think they found that unconstitutional, right? But in Massachusetts, definitely no dice. 1, you have to have reasonable suspicion of criminal activity to stop the guy or girl. And 2, secondly, you have to have, on top of the reasonable suspicion, you need to have reasonable suspicion that the person is armed and dangerous. Any questions on that?
So this may be your next slide, but taking from where you were going, so if we stop that person, frisk him, find a firearm, it's not to find evidence, it's to make sure your safety is there, but then can at that point it be used as evidence?
Yes. So any contraband that's found during a lawful frisk, if it's conducted properly, anything that's found contraband can be used against them under the plain view doctrine.
What if he's got a license to carry?
Then he's all set. But just because someone has a license to carry doesn't mean that they're not a danger to the police or anyone else, right? But we're gonna figure that out before we return the firearm or take it as evidence, right? You're assigned to Operations Days Division and on uniform patrol in a marked Worcester police cruiser at 08:15 hours. You are traveling in the downtown area. As you're traveling down Franklin Street, you observe my guy, Rob Gronkowski, walking through an alleyway that connects Franklin Street to Myrtle Street. We familiar with this alley? It's right across from the Common. You're familiar with Gronkowski, you know he's homeless and is addicted to fentanyl. In the past, the property owner has complained about vagrants congregating in the alley and leaving used hypodermic needles on the ground. Excuse me. Believing that Gronkowski is trespassing, you pull down the alley and stop Gronkowski. During your conversation, Gronkowski is compliant and has his hands visible and down by his side. You tell Gronkowski to turn around and place his hands against the wall, and you pat frisk him. During the frisk, you find that Gronkowski is in possession of a double-edged dagger-style knife. Given this scenario, is your stop and frisk of Gronkowski constitutional? Any yeses? Any no's? A lot of I don't knows, huh?
Well, he gave you permission, right?
So we have reasonable suspicion to stop him, right? He's trespassing, right? We have reasonable suspicion to stop him, but what is Gronkowski doing to give us reasonable suspicion to believe that he's armed and dangerous? Nothing, right? His hands are down by his side.
He's doing what he's being told to do.
Yeah, right? We can't frisk him here. I mean, we can get to it later on if we're going to arrest him. We'll get to that later on, but just on the facts of this fact pattern, we can't frisk him here. Now this one, you can tell I like my scenarios. You dispatch to Jimmy's Variety Convenience Store, and all these scenarios, these are all things that happen almost daily in Worcester. You dispatch to Jimmy's Variety Convenience, located on the corner of Vernon and Upsala Street, on the report of an armed robbery. Dispatch advised responding officers that the clerk reported being robbed by a male armed with a hypodermic needle. First arriving officers broadcast that the suspect is described as a white male of average height and build, wearing gray joggers and a green camo hoodie, armed with a hypodermic needle. As you're traveling up Maxwell Street, right around the corner, towards Vernon Street, you observe a male matching the exact description running in your direction. When the suspect sees you, he turns down a dead-end alleyway on Maxwell Street. You exit your cruiser and approach the suspect, who has his hands in the air and states, "I'm sorry, officer, I'm sick." Given this scenario, would you be justified in conducting a pat frisk? Right? Yeah. You got reasonable suspicion to stop him. He matches the description from the armed robbery. 2, it was an armed robbery, right? Where a needle was used. And he ran out of the store with the needle. That makes sense? You guys see the difference?
Yeah.
Cool. Arrests. The taking of a person into custody.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
You said that he ran out the door with the needle, so what if he didn't?
What if he didn't? Good question. If he didn't, you would get to that frisk anyway, because you would place him under arrest for the robbery. I would say that if someone has one needle on them, it's likely they're going to have another one. And is it reasonable to believe, right? Not definitely does he have a needle on him. He might not. But is it reasonable to believe that he still has another one? Especially if you're used to dealing with drug addicts, IV drug addicts on a regular basis. You know that oftentimes they have like a needle in their sock, another one here, you know. But you have to articulate that. You know what I'm saying?
You're never going to know until you pat him down.
Right. But you have to articulate that. Arrests. Any other questions? Hey, and let me know, because I lose track of time and I don't have a watch, if it's like 45 minutes or something and you guys want a break. Okay? The taking of a person into custody and depriving him of his freedom of action in order that he be brought before the court to answer the criminal charges. That's a definition of arrest. Standard for the arrest? Probable cause. Excuse me, more likely than not. And for that matter, probable cause is also the standard anytime we search. You're assigned to Operations First Half Division on uniform patrol in a marked Worcester police cruiser. That's how I started every single one of my police reports. You're dispatched to 20 Almont Ave on the report of a possible domestic assault. First floor resident called 911 and reported that she can hear shouting and items crashing inside of apartment 2. An address history reveals a lengthy domestic history between the residents Tom Brady and Giselle Bungin. My guy. Upon your arrival, you locate Bungin leaving the building through the back door. She's visibly upset as she is teary-eyed and breathing heavily through her nose. You stop Bungin and ask her what happened and refuse to answer. Once backup arrives, you make your way up to apartment 2 where you encounter Brady. Brady has scratches on his face. His hair is in disarray, can you believe it? And his shirt is stretched at the collar. Brady allows you into the apartment and you observe that the apartment has been ransacked. Brady tells you that he and Bungin have been married for 10 years and that she became upset with him because he wanted to move to Tampa, Florida. Can you believe that guy? I was mad at him too. The two became involved in a heated argument and Bungin began throwing objects at Brady. The argument escalated and Bungin attacked Brady by slapping, scratching, and pulling Brady's hair. Brady said that he attempted to restrain Bungin and she ran out of the back door. Given the scenario, is it more likely than not that Bungin assaulted Brady?
Yeah.
Yeah? Any no's? So the police that went to this call, they have probable cause. Guess what's happening to Bungin? She's having a bad day.
So just Brady?
What's that?
Just Brady got a bad day?
Well, I think they both have a bad day. Well, Bungin's going to jail. That's what I meant.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, 'cause she's on her way out the back door, and you obviously don't know what's happened, and especially if it's a report of a domestic, which statistically is male assaulting a female.
That's why I put it this way.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you bring her, like, what, I think you might say, like, basically, if she just says, no, I'm leaving now, like, I want to leave, because you don't have anything probable cause at that point to detain her or reasonable, what's the?
So I would argue that we have reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, that she's involved in criminal activity.
Okay.
Okay? And that she would be detained until we got to the bottom of what happened. But if we didn't have reasonable suspicion, if she was just someone just walking out, no, we wouldn't be able to stop them. Then we'd get the information from Brady and then take out charges or go try to find her and arrest her. Right?
So I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Why was only Brady the one that was arrested?
Brady wasn't.
Brady wasn't arrested.
Oh, okay.
Bungin was arrested.
Okay.
No, Brady wasn't arrested.
Okay, all right.
Had Bungin gave it her side of the story, I guarantee you it would have conflicted with Brady, right? There's always two sides to every story. But
I just didn't hear the
a lot of times as police officers, we don't get that other side of the story. And that's what the day in court is for. Search incident to arrest. In Massachusetts, a search incident to arrest, SIA, may be made for the following two reasons. The first is for seizing fruits, instrumentalities, contraband, and other evidence of a crime for which the arrest was made to prevent its destruction or concealment. And the second is for removing any weapons that the arrestee might have to use to resist his arrest or affect his escape. So this is after a person's placed under arrest. We're able to search them for these two reasons. Miranda warnings. They're designed to protect the constitutional right against self-incrimination, right? We talked about that, the Fifth Amendment. When are the police required to administer Miranda warnings? Police are required to issue Miranda warnings prior to any custodial interrogation. Well, what is that? It's questioning initiated by law enforcement after a person has been taken into custody or otherwise deprived of his freedom of action in any way. Initiated by law enforcement. These are your Miranda warnings. Before we ask any questions, you must understand your rights. You have the right to remain silent. If you choose to speak, anything you say can be used against you in a court of law or other proceeding. You have the right to consult with an attorney before answering any questions and to have him present with you during questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney and want one, a lawyer will be provided for you by the Commonwealth at no cost to you. If you decide to answer questions now, you may stop at any time to consult with an attorney. So, up in the Detective Bureau, we have forms that have the Miranda warnings on them. We read them. We read them to the suspect that's under arrest. Give them the form. They can read it themselves. They sign, date it. We sign and date it. Out on the street, officers have a card, laminated card that they keep in their blouse pocket. That if they have to issue Miranda warnings, boop, they have it. Yes, ma'am.
What about someone with limited English proficiency? How do you make sure that they understand their rights?
So, depends on what language, right? So if it's
Language that you don't have access to.
language, well, we have to find a person that speaks that language, whether it's through a translation line or something. We're certainly not going to be interviewing someone that we can't communicate with anyway. But we often encounter that a lot of Spanish in Worcester, Portuguese. Now Haitian Creole is another big one that's in the city. And we find a police officer that speaks that language, and then they'll come in, and we also have it written, the forms written in that language. But yeah, we bring someone in that speaks that language, and they interpret or, yeah. Does that answer your question?
What if you are not sure the person understands? If it's, there just seems to be either a language barrier, or there seems to be a developmental disability, you're not, do you make sure that the person fully understands what the person understands?
Yes, so they have to knowingly, voluntarily waive their rights. And sometimes that happens, and there'll be, if an interrogation or an interview does happen following that, they'll be guaranteed to have a motion to suppress at court, and the defense will make their argument, and the prosecution will make their argument, and a judge will decide whether or not.
I understand all that. I'm more curious about your guys' protocol and how you're trained. So, is there anything in your training that says if you are concerned or you have doubts about a person's cognitive capacity, do you have protocols that you need to follow to slow down the process so that you don't get into a motion to suppress, but rather that you respect the outcome?
Sure. If in any way that we suspect that this person doesn't understand their Miranda warnings, we just treat it basically as an invocation of their Miranda rights.
Great.
Yeah.
In the case of minors.
Yeah. So we're getting into the weeds. Remember, I told you this is a this is a 40-hour course condensed into an hour and a half. Minors, so
Yeah, teenager is 16, 17 years old.
yeah,
Involved.
so you need to have an interested adult with them. Explain, they read Miranda while they're there. They give them time to consult with each other whether or not they want to speak. Under 14, they absolutely have to have an interested adult there. Over 16 and over, or over 16, they don't necessarily have to have an interested adult there, but they have to, like, this is like a checklist. You know, are they familiar? Have they been involved in with the police before? Are they have a high level of sophistication? Whole bunch of things. We don't interview people. We don't in Worcester. We don't interview juveniles unless there's a parent, just to avoid something coming down later on over at the courthouse where that interview or interrogation will get thrown out. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, ma'am? If a person invokes their right to remain silent or requests an attorney, questioning must stop immediately. Another scenario. You're assigned to Operations 1st Half Division on uniform patrol on a marked Worcester police cruiser at 1800 hours at 6 p.m. You're traveling on Grafton Street behind a blue Honda Civic bearing Mass 123 ABC. As you're approaching traffic signal at the intersection of Cutler and Grafton Street, the light turns from green to yellow. At the same time, the Civic accelerates and passes through the intersection just after the light turns red. You ran a red light. You activate your overhead blue lights and sirens, stop the Civic on Grafton Street. The driver identified himself as Mac Jones. Boo. A check of Jones' license status revealed that his license is suspended. We can arrest someone for that if it happens in our presence. We'll get to that in the criminal law portion of this. Jones is removed from the Civic and placed in handcuffs. As you are inventorying the Civic, you discover a 9mm Glock handgun under the driver's seat. You approach Jones and ask him if he has a license to carry. Given this scenario, are you required to provide Miranda warnings to Jones?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Is he in custody?
Yeah.
And did we ask him a question? Brilliant. Perfect. The exclusionary rule. All evidence obtained by searches and seizures in violation of the Constitution is constitutionally inadmissible in court. If we're pat-frisking someone, we're pat-frisking them for weapons. If for some reason we turn that into a search and we don't have probable cause, we search, now we've turned it into a search, we get drugs. What's going to happen at court is there'll be a motion to suppress. They're going to kick those drugs out, and we won't be able to use them against that person. The exclusionary rule. You guys want to take a quick break? Because I think we finished the con law portion. Oh, I'm sorry.
So say a person tells you something about what happened before you read them their rights. Does that evidence not count anymore towards the investigation?
Good question. Did everyone hear a question? All right, tell me if I got it right. If a person tells me something before I've read them their Miranda warnings, will it be able to be used against them? Yes. The only way it wouldn't be if it was an answer to a question I asked, right? If someone's talking and they're in handcuffs and someone's talking, I'm letting them talk, right? I'm not asking them any questions, I'm letting them talk, okay? Because anything they say can be used against them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's only in response to a question from a police officer. Any other questions? You guys want to take a couple minutes, or you want to power through it? I don't have a watch. What time is it?
7:50.
What time do you guys usually get out of here? All right. You want to take a couple minutes, because the majority of it's done, so probably another half hour.
How much more?
Half hour, if that.
Half hour, who wants to go for the half? I'll go for the half hour if everybody else does. Yeah.
Okay. My guy. All right, criminal law. So when we're talking criminal law, we're talking about statutory law. What is that? They're laws that are written and enacted by legislative branches of government. Excuse me. They're broken down into two classifications. We have felonies and we have misdemeanors. What is a felony? It's a crime that's punishable by death or any term in the state prison. What's a misdemeanor? Basically anything that isn't a felony. Misdemeanors, usually if they're going to go to jail, they do their time in the House of Correction. So rights of arrest. This is super, super important for police officers to know. The reason being is because you may not have, depending on the crime, you may not have a right of arrest. So you need to know that crime, if there's a right of arrest, what is the right of arrest, and whether or not you have probable cause to make that arrest. Okay? So the first right of arrest we have is an arrest warrant. An arrest warrant anywhere in the Commonwealth. So if a judge or a clerk of courts issues an arrest warrant for someone, a Worcester police officer is not bound by jurisdiction. We can arrest that person anywhere in the state. A felony. A felony, whether it happens in the officer's presence or in the past on probable cause. In the past on probable cause means I smash a bottle over somebody's head and I run away from the scene. That's a felony. That's assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. That's a felony. I run away from the scene. Police go, they talk to the guy. 2 hours later, they see me bebopping down the street. They can come up and arrest me then. Okay? Misdemeanor. Misdemeanor statutory right in the officer's presence or in the past on probable cause. So there's a list, and officers have to be familiar with this list of misdemeanors that have the same right of arrest as a felony. Then you have misdemeanors. If a misdemeanor happens in your presence, you can make an arrest. An example of this is unlicensed operation of a motor vehicle, okay? We stop a car for a traffic violation, that person doesn't have a license, that violation happened in our presence, we can make an arrest. Versus, we get dispatched to a car accident, we get there 10, 15 minutes after the car accident happened, excuse me, that misdemeanor is no longer happening in our presence. It's already over. We no longer have a right of arrest. We have to request a summons and charge that person with unlicensed operation of a motor vehicle. Then we have misdemeanors in the officer's presence, and that amounts to a breach of the peace. What is a breach of the peace? A violation of public order or any act or disturbance which disrupts public peace. A breach of the peace is merely a condition that occurs concurrently with an ongoing misdemeanor. So a breach of the peace is not an actual crime, okay? It's just a condition that's going on with the crime. So, assault and battery. Okay, we're going to get to this. I actually use assault as an example. But assault and battery, if we witness an assault and battery, and usually there'll be a breach of the peace in some way, shape, or form that accompanies that, we can arrest that person who commits the assault and battery that happens in our presence with the breach of the peace. So criminal violations are broken down into chapters and sections. Each violation is further broken down into elements. To charge someone with a specific crime, the officer must prove every element to that crime. If the one element's missing, can't charge them with that crime. What's the standard to arrest somebody? Probable cause. So here's an example. If you open a law book, or there's a lot of different ones, but if you open the law book that I use, this is how it will look. Mass General Law, Chapter 265, which is crimes against a person. Section 13A is assault. The M next to it, that's a misdemeanor. The elements, whoever attempts to commit a battery to the person of another by force and violence, or whoever places a person in imminent fear of receiving an immediate battery. Then it tells us what our right of arrest is, an officer's present, and amounts to the breach of the peace, and then it gives us our penalty, which doesn't really affect us any way, shape, or form. So what's an assault? It's when I throw a punch at somebody and they duck it and I miss them. It's an attempted battery.
An assault also could be someone is screaming in someone's face, I'm going to kick you freaking.
Yeah, that's under the or. Whoever places a person in imminent fear of receiving an immediate battery. Mm-hmm. First one's a lot easier to prove than the second one, though. Here we go. Scenario. You're assigned to Operations Last Half Division, and you guys familiar? We have Operations Days, Operations First Half, which is 4 to midnight, and then Last Half, okay, overnights. I just assume you did. You were assigned to Operations Last Half Division on uniform patrol on a Mark Whistler police cruiser. At the beginning of your shift, your supervisor instructed the officers in your sector to be at the intersection of Water and Harrison Street to deter violence that might occur as the local bars are closing. This was like every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night when I was on the road. They call it the gladiator pit. Fights nonstop. At 0 to 100 hours, you're standing outside of Jose Murphy's as a crowd is emptying from the bar. During this time, your attention is drawn to 2 males who appear to be involved in a heated argument. You observe male 1 trying to walk away from the escalating argument, and male 2 pursuing male 1. At that time, you observe male 2 throw a closed-fisted punch at male 1's head. Male 1 ducked the punch, and several bystanders grab and restrain male 2. Given the scenario, can you arrest male 2 for the assault?
Yeah.
You can, right?
Yep.
Because assault is a misdemeanor, but it happened in your presence and it amounted to a breach of the peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a police officer needs to know this. Did everyone hear her question?
No.
Basically, she's asking about no-knock search warrants. If a no-knock search warrant is issued and pursuant to an informant providing the police with information, the police go to the courthouse, right, I'm assuming, and get a no-knock search warrant, and then execute that no-knock search warrant, and the facts that present themselves after the warrant is executed aren't what the informant said in the beginning, who's at fault? Well, one, there's judicial review over any time a search warrant is issued, right? So police officer gathers all the information, the standard is probable cause, puts it on an affidavit, submits it either to a clerk of courts or to a judge who reviews it. There's your judicial review, okay? They either okay it or they don't. And this is just a search warrant. This is not a no-knock. A no-knock has to be issued by a judge. And it also, there's other stipulations. There can't be any children. There can't be anyone over the age 65 in the house. So who's at fault? Did the informant lie? I don't know. You know, did the officer lie when he wrote the affidavit? I hope not. Right? Was the judge hungover when he read the affidavit? I hope not. Right? I don't know. It's kind of too general of a question. But I know the incident you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So these are the standards. I'm curious about what the police department does when a standard apparently.
Discipline.
What's that look like?
Not a question for me. I know that this. Do you have a meeting with our BOPS unit?
They came
It was on the first one.
Okay. Did they address that with you at all? Or?
I wasn't there, I was sick that one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, the videotape it. Yes, sir.
Obviously, there's potentially changes to constitutional law happening every day.
Yeah.
How frequently are officers trained on updates, especially if it's something that's that's major, and then how does that happen to, or how does the confirmation happen that an officer has acknowledged that, yes, the Supreme Court just ruled you can be recorded by somebody with a video camera, so you can't stop them, for example?
Yeah, so we'll be notified. We'll be notified of the case law that comes out that changes past practice, right? If the entire department will be notified of the change in the case law, and then we have biannual in-service training. Well, that will absolutely be addressed in in-service training. So, and every officer is mandated to go to the in-service training. And then officials, our supervisors will know, and they'll explain, especially if it's like a real drastic change, and there's usually not drastic changes to case law. The supervisors will let everyone know in roll call. So yeah, it would definitely not go unnoticed, you know.
And so there wouldn't necessarily be able to a way for somebody to say, oh, I just wasn't aware.
No.
And
No, that wouldn't be an excuse. No. Okay. Thank you. I'll go get Paul.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah.